A BB40 and straight black pride brothers and sisters. This is your brother, DC Radical 1. This is episode 13 of DC's Radical Thoughts. And I think I'm going to call this one Why We Can't Get Free. And this was inspired by a hypothesis that I had years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And I haven't really expressed it publicly. Not that I think of anyway, but it's always possible. You get to put out a lot of content, you forget what you say in front of a mic sometimes. But years ago, I asked one of my elders, Baba Dr. El Senzakulu Zulu, did he think that the breakup of the family in the modern era, did he think that that was the reason why it's so much more difficult in modern times to organize black people? And he kind of looked at me and thought about it, and he said he really didn't know, because he had never thought about it in that way. And so I expressed this to a couple other people, and that was that. But the more I think about it, I believe that is the case, based upon one thing in particular. And we don't think about it this way, but I remember telling a couple of brothers, including Brother Genie, I remember telling him is that the family is where you learn to love black people that you don't like, right? And think about it this way. If we all know people who have siblings that they just don't get along, right? There's a brother, older brother, little brother, sister. Sometimes you can have a bunch of children and two of them get along and two of them don't know. It's all types of weird combinations with that. I think we've probably all seen that. But if any outside threat comes, then they defend each other and whatnot, right? And so, I use that to say that despite their sibling rivalries that sometimes extend and often extend even to adulthood, nonetheless, there's love there, right? And so the family is the first place where you learn to love black people, whether you like them or not. You liking them or you even agreeing with them, it's not relevant. It doesn't change your when you have a healthy family dynamic, that is, it doesn't change your perspective on them, right? Now, in the state that we're in, with the breakdown of the family structure as it's centered historically with black people, which is not just your mother and your father, your brother and your sister, but the family from an African perspective, and it has that followed us here to America because it's a core part of our Asili, as Dr. Marimba Ani would say. You're talking about mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, grandmothers, grandfathers, cousins, uncles, aunts, great uncles and great aunts, and so forth and so on, right? That is considered a family within our culture. And sometimes you have, cousins that grow up together and they're like brother and sister. Like, so when that's the natural paradigm and that begins to break down, then the generations that come after that paradigm begins to break down don't have the experience of working with people to get a problem solved or helping each other when a situation arises or things like that. And in the same way that happens in a family, and you need that dynamic within a family, is the same way that you need that dynamic within an organization. Because most of the times, right, especially when it's basically a racial or race-based organization, that race-based organization is going to shape or give you a new identity, right? You just use the Elijah Muhammad Nation of Islam, for example. At that time, black people were known as, still calling themselves Negroes, right? He gave black people the original black man identity. Like, that was the name that they were called, or they were calling themselves, and they called themselves publicly Muslims and black Muslims. But within the structure of the nation, the black man was the original man, and that changed their identity. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that the same way that the breakdown of the family has been an impediment, I was thinking about something, another impediment to our being able to organize, and that's simply our reliance on religion. And when I've talked to various people about this dynamic, and one thing I thought about, and when I said it out loud, I was kind of like, that can't be right. But when I thought about it, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong when y'all hear this, but I've told several people, I said, I don't think we've had a strong, non-religious based racial uplift organization since the Black Panther Party. And when I tell people that, everybody kind of looks at me and they kind of think, and it kind of dawns on them, and no one has a counter to that assessment, right? And you know, when I really think about it, the number of major black founded, black headed, and black funded organizations that we have, that are national, that are self-sustaining, economically and otherwise, especially at this time, it's virtually null and void, whether they're religious based or not. Like, literally, when I think about it, you may have the different college fraternities and things like that, but they're not, I mean, I've seen some of them, they're not even racially exclusive anymore. So I don't, once you are not, your organization isn't racially exclusive, I don't consider it a black organization once you let outsiders in. And so, and that points to a whole nother thing, which is the need for integration. And I mean, when I really think about it, impediments to racial organizing, one of them now is integration, and really it's been integration for a long time. Like Dr. Chancellor Williams said that integration is the key element in the destruction of black civilization. So if you look at it on a macro scale, he's saying that since for the last 6,000 years, the reason we can't either build or sustain something, or something is destroyed that we built or sustained, including nation states and empires, is because of integration. And when he's talking about integration, he's talking about, in essence, horizontal integration, that kind of race mixing. And the reality of the situation is, nobody wants to talk about it, but there's no such thing as social integration where miscegenation doesn't occur. That's just the reality of the situation. If you have different groups of people, there's going to be a power dynamic established, and eventually the powerful group is generally going to impose themselves on a less powerful group, and part of that imposition is dealing with the less powerful group's women, right? Now, if you go back in our history, deep in African history, part of the way that we sealed treaties was to exchange people in marriage, and to thus make one family out of two through marriage. So if there was a conflict and then you resolve the conflict and you say part of us having a peace treaty is having a series or succession of marriages where at that point we're more than allies, we're family, because I have given you my daughter and you have given me your daughter to marry my son, and so forth and so on, stuff like that. That was part of our African tradition. The fundamental problem with that is that if you go back thousands of years ago, black people did that tradition, but the people that they were doing that tradition with, Eurasians and whatnot, they just used that as an end to be able to influence the ruling class and make themselves part of the part of the higher echelons of the kingdom, and part of the ruling class and part of the ruling family, and eventually to open up the floodgates and let their their relatives and their members of their nation into our nations to be able to overthrow our nations. This is a documented part of ancient Kemetic history. It's been documented, right? Anybody that's familiar with Kemetic history will tell you that. So when you look at it from the modern situation, if that was a problem then when we were in control, we had power and had the stronger military, then it's more of a problem now. And the reality of the situation is that when I look at our people in today's day and time, in America especially, I can't speak about the continent because I haven't been there, is that this is what it seems like to me. It seems like to me that subconsciously there's a group of black men, especially, I think the motivations for black women are different, so I'm just speaking about black men. There's a group of black men who believe that they're gaining a measure of freedom and power by dealing with non-black women, specifically European females. And I believe that a lot of black women believe that they are dealing with a better man because the European male has been dominant. And so when they deal with European men, they're dealing with the better man. He's better simply because of who he is, because his race has been dominant for the last 500 years. And so this dynamic makes it impossible for, people who like to say we should unite all black people. We can't unite with people who see our enemies as superior to us, right? That person has a deep-seated self-hatred that's going to stop them from even wanting to deal with us in any way, shape, or form. And, before you know it, you get like a Jesse Lee Peterson who's thanking the white man for thanking God for slavery, which God to him is the white man, so he's thanking God and the white man is one and the same thing for slavery. Yeah, like that's a type of racial treason and menticide and psychosis that some of our people have. And so if we're being completely honest, there's a significant portion of our people who are, in my opinion, I hate to say it, but they're irredeemable. And, I got another episode coming up soon. We'll discuss or ask the question, really, it's a question. What is forgivable? As far as things that you do before you come in the movement, like what is forgivable? What is redeemable? What isn't redeemable? That's a discussion that we're going to need to have. But when I look at these different things, one of the issues is that because of integration and because some people have been able to achieve a modicum of economic success, they moved up the maybe over the generations they moved up the American economic ladder, so they see themselves as being free based upon their ability to achieve certain status, get certain educational accolades and certain professional achievements. But that doesn't really change the condition of our people. Dr. Amos Wilson, he said something to the effect that no amount of individual achievement can overcome collective powerlessness. And I think that that's one thing that we are reticent to look at, is our collective powerlessness as a people. Or even if you don't call it powerlessness, the power dynamic between black people and Europeans hasn't changed significantly in 500 years, regardless of the number of laws that have been passed, or regardless of what individual achievements people may make. Nonetheless, if you just look at our condition, comparatively speaking, to basically almost everybody else in America, and from a global perspective, look at black people's condition compared to everybody else in the world. I mean, we just have to be completely honest. We in the basement. We in the toilet bowl of the world stage. From a military standpoint, as far as the African nations, they're virtually helpless. You look at black people in America. Black people in America haven't shown even a propensity to defend themselves. Since the Black Panther Party for self-defense, being completely honest. So when you really think about it, I think subconsciously our people know good and well the state we're in and everything like that, but nobody wants to admit it. Nobody wants to say it, and if we don't say it, we don't admit it, we don't speak it, then how can we do anything about it, right? And a lot of people, one of the other major impediments, and I think I said this before, but we haven't built. One of the reasons we haven't built anything is because we've been so dependent on religions of various sorts. It doesn't matter. Like literally, if we're being honest, good, bad, right, wrong, and indifferent, the religious institutions and religious, churches and mosques and synagogues and all that stuff, those have been and still are the best organized things that we put into place. And the thing about it is, none of that has been organized. I mean, I guess you could kind of make some exceptions, but really in the modern context, I don't even know a black religious group that's even racially exclusive. Like literally every black religious group I see, when I look up, if you stand there long enough and they have people come up and they have people represent them, or you go to their events or something like that, you eventually start seeing racially ambiguous people and people who are definitively not black. And so even with the religion, even if people are worshiping a black god or they're practicing some type of religion that talks about the divinity of black people, whatever the case may be. Even with that, like we can't even keep that black. The time, the times I've looked at it, and even with that, and still, the religion, and in my opinion, oftentimes takes all the air out of the room, and it doesn't allow for it. One of the things it does, in my opinion, most of the religious organizations I've seen, it regardless of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever, is they help divide black people because it's very difficult for those religious people to even exist amongst themselves. And without question, most hardcore religious people do not intersect, do not like non-religious people or people who are practicing some type of traditional spirituality. Those two people can't get along at all. And so whether we know it or not, whether we think it or not, whether we believe it or not, the religion helps cause further division amongst the black community. It doesn't matter what the religions are. The different religions are in competition for the minds and, I guess you could say, souls and spirits of our people. And so because of that, them coming together to do something is virtually impossible. And so that becomes an impediment. And, not to be disrespectful of anybody's religion, but all of the religions that we talk about are religions that were imposed on us. They weren't religions we were practicing before we ran into some other group of people. There are people that made the argument that many of our people were Muslims in Africa. And that is true. Many of our people were Muslims in Africa, but they weren't Muslims of their own volition. Right. You see what I'm saying? That's a whole history that I don't even want to get into now. But there is a thing called the Arab slave trade. It did start taking place back in the 7th century. It has not been, still has not been destroyed. It's still going on. And we got to see the upswing of it when Libya fell in the fall of Gaddafi, and it's still taking place. I put it in lectures and everything. I've documented it. So when we look at all these things, all these issues and all these barriers and all these hurdles to us coming together, man, it's, I'm not gonna lie, it's frustrating, because if we could find some way to just neutralize some of these things, we could come together for the benefit of ourselves. But I mean, it's just, man, it's so difficult, because I think really the key starts with the family, and that's the thing that's in most disarray from what I can see, just from life experience over the last just seeing things over the last, let's say, 30 years, where you just really can see and experience, just in my own family and being around people, just see the family structure really, just fall apart. You can watch generations where everybody's married and then everybody's not. It's just plain and simple. Like I said, this podcast is stream of consciousness, and when it comes to like major solutions, on this one, if I had the answers, we'd be free. You know what I'm saying? Like, just being completely honest, if I had the answers, I'll find a way to implement them, and we would be free. Like, the whole goal of Straight Black Pride movement was to build something that would supersede supersede our religious doctrine, partially, like, it was to repair our families, build families, supersede our religious doctrines, and to be able to unite on a simple paradigm of black man, black woman, black child. That thus far has not been implemented as successfully as was desired when it was created, for various reasons, which I don't want to get into. It's a lot of stuff. One of which is, being completely honest, we never think about it, but being completely honest, organization really literally came under attack as soon as the name and logo was put out. We were attacked in the media, and there were various articles and things like that put out. And so that's one thing. If you're going to be an organizer, you're going to be, whatever you want to call yourself, revolutionary, freedom fighter, organizer, activist, whatever you want to call yourself. Really, the measuring stick of whether or not you're moving in the right direction is the amount of opposition you get. You don't get any opposition from your enemies, and increasingly opposition from our own people who are running it headlong in the wrong direction. You don't get any opposition from them. You're probably not doing anything, being completely honest. So when I just wanted to get that hypothesis, put that hypothesis out, see what people say as far as the breakup of the family, making it more difficult to organize our people. Something I've been thinking about, like I said, for a decade, and it's one of those things. Now it becomes a chicken or egg thing, because it's like, okay, well, you have to work on the family to be able to organize, and if you can't organize, how you work on the family, right? So that's the chicken and egg aspect of it. And it's just one of those things, man, that I just want to put in the atmosphere and see if anyone else agrees with that assessment, or they don't agree and they think that I'm wrong and they have a simpler explanation or a simpler solution. I'm literally just basing my hypothesis on years of trying to organize black people so that we could better our condition, and just like I said, this is what I see. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Again, leave your feedback. This is your brother DC Radical 1, and this has been DC's Radical Thoughts. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cash App is $DC Radical1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A beat before ODA and straight black pride.